Welcome to Protect, Suicide Prevention Training Podcast for Healthcare Professionals. I'm Manan, consultant psychiatrist, founder, and head of faculty at Progress Guide.
Hi everyone, it's Mahi, your Protect podcast host. Today is a very special episode. It's our 50th podcast episode. We have listeners from 95 different countries, spread over 1,254 cities. Manan and I just want to thank you for listening, tuning in every week, and spreading the word.
And actually, I would like to thank you, Mahi, because it's not just recording a podcast. There's a lot of work that goes on at the back end of editing the sound, uploading everything, putting it on Buzzsprout, the agency through which we host our podcast, and all the marketing that you have been doing in the back end with Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So, yeah, a really amazing achievement. So, very, very proud of what we have achieved, 50 podcasts. And we have a special treat for you all, our listeners today, because we've had lots and lots of requests regarding summary episodes. Have had quite a few requests from our listeners because there are so many concepts across so many chapters. And they have been asking for, it would be good if you can record a podcast or maybe over 2 podcasts, a summary of the key concepts, key images, key messages. We have been trying a lot on that as well. And, after listening to this podcast, if you are interested, send us an email at
admin@progress.guide.
There you go, admin@progress.guide. And we will send you a beautiful 30-page PDF of all the key images, along with the key messages and how they relate to safety planning. So that is something we have prepared specially in order to celebrate 50th episode of the Protect podcast. So that is yours. You just have to email us at admin@progress.guide and request that, and we will send it to you. So that is a special treat, actually, which I have
Yeah, so before we jump into that, Manan, I think we should do a little catch up. I mean, last time we caught up, that was before the Malaysia trip. So do you want to share some highlights of your trip to Malaysia?
Yes, of course. Like, we had 2 awesome guests in the middle, isn't it? We had Stan Steinlaw and Ali Kelly. So we haven't recorded our usual podcast since the trip to Malaysia. So Malaysia was absolutely amazing. The food over there is to die for. I put on 4 kilograms extra in weight. I took a photograph of the weight I had put on from the weighing machine and sent it to Dr. Pauki to say that you are responsible. And she said, oh, you will lose it in no time. But the food is absolutely amazing. And the one thing that is even more beautiful than the food are the people over there. They are so friendly, so respectful, and so keen to learn. Those 5 days that I was teaching just went in a flash. And I don't think I have signed so many books on the final day of the training. Like, those people made me feel like a rock star over there.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, no, it was an amazing trip, and I really had a good time teaching. And we've done so many things. So on the final day, which we just did with the Progress Guides, people who are going to be training other people over there, we recorded the videos for the 7 safe steps. And again, Dr. Pauki acted in the role of a 16-year-old called Sam, who was going through a crisis at schools. And I was the school counselor, and we recorded all the episodes, and those videos are available through the Safe Life Guide app as well for people who have the subscription. They can see those videos. For all our friends in Malaysia, those videos are there for you to watch now. And I have put little headers and footers over there, and snaps and screenshots, screen grabs of the app as well to guide you through the 7 safe steps conversations as well.
What are the next steps for Malaysia?
So the next steps include, they are hoping to start a certification program for suicide prevention in March, and that will be a 4-month program. So March 2025, that's what we are working for. We had our first online training session as well. So the Progress Guides are getting clued into all the kind of difficult questions that might come up and how to run those interactive workshops and sessions. So that's something really to look forward to. And while we are running the certificate program, we will initiate the paperwork for an advanced diploma in suicide prevention, which will take a slightly longer period of time because you have to go through the approval process through the Malaysian universities.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting that we will have that program available. Sometime, I guess the advanced diploma might go into 2026. So we have a strong collaboration that's building up with Malaysia. And you know what? We have come up with a beautiful name. So the word Surya in Malay means sun, and sun is right in the center of the Malaysian flag. So it's spelled SURIA. And we have come up with the acronym Suicide Research and Innovation Academy. And we're calling it Malay Surya, given they are translating all the books into Malay as well. And as you know, your grandfather and my father's first name is Malay. So it almost feels like this was destined to happen.
Oh, wow.
So Malay, yeah, well, I didn't think of it. It just came together because while we were there with Dr. Pauki and Mr. Boon Lee, we were, or is it Lee Boon? They do have the surname first. We were talking about what should we be calling this collaboration. And we were trying for 7 days putting words together. But as you know, making acronyms is my favorite pastime. And when I arrived here, I think I texted Dr. Pauki back from the airport itself to say, you know, I think I've got it. It's Surya, Suicide Research and Innovation Academy, SURIA, which is Surya, the word Surya. Actually, in Hindi as well, the word Surya means sun. But it's spelled with a Y in Hindi, but in Malay, it's spelled with an I, which brings in the word innovation. And innovation is at the heart of what we do here at Progress Guide.
That's so cool. And I heard that you're translating some of the books actually into different languages.
Yeah, so they will be translating it into Malay, and hopefully after that's done, they will be doing the Mandarin translation as well, which will open up China and working over there. So that's going to be pretty amazing.
And the Spanish translation as well?
The Spanish translation's coming along really nicely, thanks to Dr. Cynthia Laos. She has put in some really back-breaking hours into this. And so she has translated all 17 chapters and will be doing the kind of roundup of that. We're translating some of the images as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's that works almost, well, when I say almost done, it will most likely take another 6 months by the time we get all the images and everything completed. Yeah, and some of the images are quite difficult to translate as well, but she has done all the text. So the 17 chapter text, the Spanish translation is complete. So
that's so good.
Yeah, so we'll be ready to release into Latin America. So yeah, and we'll be reaching out to people as well to look into the Portuguese translation. I might actually reach out to Dr. Monica Santos. She is from Portugal. And I don't know whether there's a difference in Brazilian Portuguese and Portuguese, but I might reach out to Dr. Santos to see whether she would be interested in doing that work, translating the books into Portuguese as well.
And any new upcoming talks?
Number of them actually, because it's getting to that busy part of the year when kind of you have the Suicide Prevention Month and the Suicide Prevention Week. Different countries do different things. So, well, just this weekend. So it's still the weekend in the US, but it would be early hours of Monday morning. So 5:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So Brisbane time, 5:30 a.m. I will be doing the US Suicide Prevention Summit. So it's still the evening in the US, but it would be the early hours of the morning. So I guess, lots of people in Australia wake up early. If you do 5:30 a.m. Mental Health Academy, that's where I will be talking about digitizing safety. So that's a talk that I'm really looking forward to, because last time I think I had almost 3,000 odd people who attended that. So it's like, for a suicidologist, it's like playing Wembley, the US Suicide Prevention Summit. So yeah, thanks to Pedro Gondin and his team at the Mental Health Academy. They are doing some amazing work, lots of amazing speakers all through the weekend as well. And I have got the final slot on the kind of on Sunday. So I hope I live up to that expectation
I'm
of
sure
bringing
you
it home.
I'm sure you will.
And then in the first week of September, we're doing King's College London. I've got 2 days that I'm training, 4th and 11th of September evenings. I think those will be those overnight programs. So yeah, and actually plenty happening in September. And there are some internal talks as well where I work in Princess Alexandra Hospital. That's next week, where I'll be talking about my very own well-being team. And they have got some amazing results from the suicide prevention work that they have been doing and the 4-week pathway that they run over there. And that it's an interesting topic because I'll be talking about the magic of lived experience and professional expertise and how that magic happens when it comes together. I'll be talking a lot about the data of the research, and the numbers are absolutely mind-blowing. So I don't know whether I'll get enough time to get into the magic component of it, but the numbers tell a story, and they tell a story of how when professionals work together with those with lived experience, you can really have an impact.
So should we get into the bulk of the episode?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, the treat is the messages and images, but of course, this is a podcast, so we will be focusing on the messages and we will be systematically working through the messages. I feel that maybe we should do the messages in the core module and the assess module today. And then in our 51st episode, we do another short, sharp episode and we kind of do the messages and images for the Aspire module because there are lots of subsections in Aspire. So how does that sound?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay, so let's get cracking then.
So starting with chapter 1, the introduction, which is relational safety. I see you, your hopes, your dreams, your fears, your aspirations. I see all that matters to you. I see you.
So in this chapter, we are actually introducing people to the idea of relational safety. And this whole thing about I see you is all about this Zulu word Sawubona. So relational safety can be conceptualized as a deeply empathic therapeutic alliance that the professional establishes with the person in distress and their natural circle of support. This natural circle of support is really important. As I mentioned, this beautiful Zulu word, Sawubona, it captures this essence of relational safety. It's a greeting. It's a hello, meaning we see you. Me and my ancestors see you. Not just you, but you and your ancestors, your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations. And in the process of seeing, we bring you into being. So to create relational safety for a person in suicidal distress, perhaps that is the way in which we need to see and listen to the person. The relationship itself becomes the springboard for recovery. And this is captured in the second word, Ubuntu, which you find on the image as well. I am because we are. Recovery is a journey of hope that is done together in partnership. This is the golden thread that runs through Protect. How to use the healing power of human relationship. How do we make a person in suicidal distress experience, truly experience Ubuntu? So that's what we talk about in chapter 1.
And now we're into the core module where we lay out the foundational principles.
Yes, so core establishes the values and principles of relational safety, and through a range of theoretical constructs and practical conversation aids, core covers the delicate balancing acts that professionals need to master between risk and recovery, life and death. And this is done across 4 conceptual chapters: Care Compass, Optimize Pain Relief, Risk Rethink, and Empathy in Action. Each concept is fundamental to the rest of the training, and hence the assertion, protect the core, progress all else. Okay, so core is the foundation on which Protect is built. The principles need to be retained to maintain fidelity to the model. Everything else in Assess and Aspire, those 2 modules you can change with the evolving evidence base and contemporary best practice, but retain the foundational principles that are in core. And in terms of the relevance to safety planning, relational safety determines the effectiveness of safety planning. So we're into the core module, and then It's chapter 2 in the book.
So next is the care compass. Without risk, there is no recovery.
So in this chapter, the key message is around the balance of positive risks. Okay, right. So as you said, without risk, there is no recovery. With the right care, the person has more control. But it is a delicate balance. Maintaining safety and building self-reliance are both important. Knowing how much or what to do when is the key. The 4 care quadrants of the care compass, it provides a visual map or conceptual aid for reflective practice and as a conversation aid for clinical practice to help find the balance of positive risks in a collaborative fashion. In terms of safety planning, engagement with safety planning is a good indicator of where the clinician's focus should be. In the absence of engagement, if the clinician's focus has shifted prematurely to self-reliance, their practice is quite risk prone. If the person is well engaged in safety planning, but the clinician has not shifted their focus towards self-reliance, then their practice is risk averse. So safety planning is the vehicle through which positive risks are realized, and it can guide where you should be on the y-axis of the care compass between safety and self-reliance. Of course, as we mentioned, email us for all the images in messages, which we will kind of give you as a PDF, because if you're looking at these images, these key messages would be a lot more meaningful. So on to chapter 3.
Optimize pain relief. Establish common ground for the road ahead.
So this chapter is all about the search for pain relief, and which we create a narrative of pain because people understand pain. And the message that we are trying to give out here is avoid a power struggle and establish common ground through a pain-based narrative. Life equates to pain for a person in suicidal distress, and the professional's desire to help translate, if you're saying, persevere with life, that actually translates into more pain for the person. So dig deep to understand the interests and needs of the person. The professional needs to communicate explicitly that they understand that beneath the position of dying lies the desire for pain relief. This needs to be done before the professional communicates their role in helping with pain relief.
And its relevance to safety planning?
So in the longer run, the process of either chipping away at the source of the pain or improving one's tolerance to the pain is safety planning in a nutshell. In the short term, though, communicate the importance of maintaining safety while treatment takes effect. It is an essential safety planning conversation, being able to talk about how you want to kind of chip away at their pain and help them on their road towards wanting to be pain-free. It's a foundational conversation that leads to good safety planning. So next up is chapter 5. Am I getting the chapter sequence right? 1, 2, 3. No. So this is chapter 4.
Risk, rethink. Reject high, medium, and low.
So as you said in the key message, this is all about the categorical fallacy. Risk is multifactorial, dynamic, and fluid. A categorical classification is static and does not take into account how the continuum of risk and, how it kind of rapidly fluctuates. Significant data has accumulated in the past 2 decades on the futility of high, medium, and low risk categories. So we want people to develop a more nuanced understanding of individual risk by formulating longitudinal risk. So how is the risk evolving over time? Is the person at their best point, their worst point? Have they turned a corner? We then want people to be thinking about unaddressed risk. So risk that cannot be mitigated through safety planning. And finally, when you have done those 2 things, you get a sense of the cross-sectional risk. What is the risk of this person compared to a defined group of people, like compared to, say, inpatients or patients in community mental health team or patients in primary care? What does this patient's risk compare to theirs? And that helps you and guides you to take action. And then you can make a judgment call about clear and imminent risk.
And about safety planning?
So without safety planning, one cannot opine on unmitigated or unaddressed risk. This means that the professional cannot draw a conclusion on whether the risk is similar to those patients who are an inpatient setting or in home treatment or in community team or in primary care, as I said. So safety planning is an essential step for risk formulation. So it's only after you have done safety planning is that you will be able to judge what is the cross-sectional risk. So now we are on to chapter 5. Yes, we're chapter 5.
Yeah. Empathy in action. So we're talking about values for relational safety: courage, curiosity, compassion, collaboration, and commitment.
So in this, we introduce our readers to the empathy in action equation. So empathy in action is cognitive empathy. Your thoughts in my mind, I have a sense of how you're thinking. Emotional empathy. Your pain in my heart, I have a sense of how you are feeling. And if you have the first two, cognitive empathy and emotional empathy, you then end up having genuine empathic concern, your genuine desire to help the person, right? So that's the equation of empathy in action. So values embody the qualities we want to bring to our actions. It is the being that precedes the doing. So constructing relational safety in the moment is a process that is embedded in these 5 core values you mentioned. So courage to be present and suspend the desire to help. Just be present. Do not attempt to fix it. Curiosity, mind open, mouth shut, set aside personal opinion and listen with fascination. I tell people that if you're going to opine, then you might as well go and write a blog, leave the construction of relational safety to someone else. Compassion, which is the third value in, compassion, sharing the person's darkness without judgment. Connect with your own pain inside. So get close enough, but not so close that you get overwhelmed, but get close enough to feel their pain. Fourth value is commitment, to reframe suicidal thoughts and acts as a desire to be pain-free. It is a universal desire to have the commitment, to have those nuanced conversations about pain and pain relief. And the final value, collaboration, to co-produce the journey ahead based on mutual respect and make the promise of recovery. You won't go to a surgeon who says, I'll cut into you and I'll try and have a go at taking your appendix out. They will make a commitment to doing all that they can, and we should make that promise of recovery. People get very worked up in workshops when I talk about the promise of recovery, but if we can't make that commitment, why are we in this person's life?
Mm-hmm. And the relevance to safety planning in this chapter?
Well, this is an attempt to walk in the person's shoes, best described as empathy in action. So the conversation provides choice, empowerment, and collaboration as the duo build trust and hope for the future. And hope is critical to any kind of safety planning that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So that completes the core module in terms of key messages. And then we are
moving on to the assess module.
Yes. And that is all about strengths-based care, recovery-oriented care. There's 6 chapters in the assess kind of module. They track the assessment exercise, beginning with an attempt to gain an understanding of self before attempting to gain an understanding of the person being assessed. So for mental health professionals to continue to grow as an assessor, it is vital for them to be self-aware. This is followed by the assessment sequence and how time gets allocated to each activity, and then we do suicide phenomenology using the STEPS model, techniques and strategies for empathic interaction in Before Now that strike a balance between the professional's need to capture data to assist in decision making and the person's need to share their story and be heard, all the way to safety formulation, where we do the despair safety formulation, and safety documentation, where we do the notes framework. And in terms of safety planning, an assessment isn't complete without safety planning, because it's the safety planning which determines the outcome of the assessment. So which chapter are we on? The first chapter?
6 or 7.
So we're losing count. So it's 4 chapters in core and 1 introduction. So that's 5 chapters. So this is chapter 6. Can't believe it's so difficult to just know the chapter numbering. Actually, we can look at the book because this is chapter 6. So chapter 6 That's page 44. That's where it begins
Mm.
in the Protect Guidebook.
So now we're talking about aware. Think about your thinking. What are your decision-making shortcuts?
Yes, so this is one of the most important chapters, and this is where Protect kind of branches out from a lot of the other suicide prevention courses over there. And we talk about cognitive dissonance, and we see what we want to see, and we get into the heuristics. So essentially what we found is that there are, and this was from the AWARE study, that there are two worlds in which clinicians operate. There is a world where we kind of get our information first, and this is what we call the rational space. In the rational space, an assessor will consider all the information they have collated, weigh up all the pros and cons, and then make a decision or take action. Unfortunately, what we often get to see in real practice at the front line is the opposite of this, which is the rationalizing space. So decision first, not information first, decision first. So, or very early in the assessment process. So in the rationalizing space, the assessor makes a decision early on and then selectively picks out the facts that are in keeping with the decision they have made. The assessment and documentation then skews and fits in with whatever you have decided. So that almost defeats the purpose of a full and thorough assessment. So in the AWARE framework, we get people to think about their thinking, and it's like kind of shining a light, so more light, less heat, to kind of get an understanding of how you're thinking, how you're making decisions using this framework of rational versus rationalizing.
And about the safety planning?
Oh, yeah. So rational versus rationalizing, as I was saying, if you know which space you're operating in the moment while making clinical decisions, you will just make better decisions. So the temptation will be there to rationalize away any positive risks you have taken or justify kind of resource-led decisions as decisions in the patient's best interest. Don't rationalize it away. Instead, take time to safety plan. So just because you're operating in a rational space, suddenly you will not have more beds. Mm-hmm. You will still have to take positive risks, and you will still have to prioritize and triage. Those are kind of essential things that we do on a day-to-day basis when we are making judgment calls. In a rationalizing space, what you will do is you will justify the decision you have made. Oh, that was the right decision, like what is to be gained by an inpatient admission. But actually, if you were in a rational space, you might have been quite worried about the person in front of you who is in suicidal crisis. But the reality is there may be 7 people in your emergency department who are in a crisis. You might only have 2 beds. So you have to make a judgment call. Don't rationalize away their distress. Make a judgment call that, okay, this seems like a resource-led decision. In a real world, if I had beds, I would have admitted them. I don't. How can I make it safer in the community because I'm making a risky decision here? So operate in the rational space, spend more time doing safety plan, and you will have a better and safer outcome for the patient. Don't rationalize away your decision.
Next is chapter 7.
Sequence.
Have you allocated adequate time to each function of the assessment process?
So the key image here is about the time allocation on the timeline. So think through how much of the total time do you spend on each activity? Is it adequate, or does the balance need to shift? Know what is it you're trying to achieve in each step of the process. Engage with the activity mindfully in order to attain clarity of purpose. Through each step, one is collating essential information for prevention and not prediction. Remember, prevention is a future-focused activity. So if you spend all your time in the assessment process looking to the past as to what has happened so far, then you haven't got enough time to look at the future. So you haven't got enough time to do safety planning. So prevention is a future-focused activity. Make sure there is adequate time left in the assessment process to explore the future, to explore what-if scenarios, to do safety planning. So, just remember that in terms of safety planning, how much of the time pie was allocated to establish facts from the past, as I said?
And what are the specifics you want people to keep in mind in regards to safety planning?
So as I mentioned, how much of the time pie was allocated to establishing facts from the past? Albeit this may be recent past, the overdose has just say happened yesterday or in the last week. And how much did you look into future challenges that need to be addressed through safety planning? So the point I was making really, if you got an 80-20 split with 80% of time spent on the past, there is then not enough time to arrive at a safety formulation or engage in meaningful safety documentation. So redivide your time pie and allocate a larger slice to the future time window.
Next is chapter 8.
So chapter 8, I think this is the steps chapter. And that is actually the biggest chapter that we have got in the book. And it's the heaviest chapter of all.
So that's about suicide phenomenology.
Yes, in which we talk about the steps model.
First impression determines the step of suicidal distress.
Yes, that's right. And the goal is to maintain the ideation action divide. So in this, we talk about how life in motion can go into predisposition, ideation, intention, action, post-action, and we're trying to take them towards safe recovery. Wherever you meet the person, you try to take them towards safe recovery. You don't have to go through the entire sequence of phenomenology that I just mentioned. So that's what the steps model is about. So the presentation of professional encounters depends on the step of suicidal distress a person is on. For educational purposes, the trajectory has been divided into 6 distinct steps, as I just mentioned. In reality, this is a continuum with significant overlap. And given the dynamic nature of risk, a person can rapidly transition between steps. However, the ability to broadly establish where a person is in terms of suicidality does bring a specific focus to the assessment process. And remember, the questions you would ask in the predisposition phase are different to the questions you would ask in ideation, which are different to the questions you would ask in intention, are different to the question you would ask in post-action.
Can you give an example?
So, for example, when you are looking at post-action, and these would be patients who might be in toxicology, for example, they've taken an overdose, you would be looking back at the incident and you might spend time trying to understand the level of intent they had through reflected intent. So you might be asking about where their final acts, did they make attempts to stop getting detected by people? What was the effort they put into it? You might ask questions about the future as to, do you regret what has happened? So those are very specific questions relating to post-action. But if you are looking at, say, the ideation phase, those questions are about suicidal thinking, so the thoughts. So are the thoughts present? If the thoughts are present, is it a passive desire to die? Or are the thoughts quite frequent? Are they passing thoughts? Are they ruminations that stay for a long period of time? What is the level of concreteness of the thought? Is there emerging clarity in what they're going to do? Can they still distract themselves from the thoughts? Is there a specific time, a space? Is a plan emerging? If they were in the intention space, the focus would all be on planning. So where the person is determines the kind of questions you would ask. And the first impression that you have of the person, essentially that's an indication to the step they are in. Of course, if during the assessment process you find they are on a different step, then you adjust the assessment process accordingly.
And the relation to safety planning?
So, as I said, adapt the focus of the assessment based on the step that the person is primarily residing on. And this is mirrored in the safety planning conversation as well, with internal coping strategies getting priority, say in predisposition, and external coping strategies receiving more attention the closer a person is to taking action. Okay, so the ultimate goal of a safety plan is to keep the ideation action divide open. And this steps model is a really nice way for people to kind of look at it and conceptualize, oh, my job is to keep the ideation action divide open. That's the entire purpose of safety planning. Stop that bridge from happening.
Next is chapter 9.
Yes, so this is the chapter on empathic interaction, which is
capturing narratives within time windows to balance the person's need to share their story and your need to capture facts efficiently.
Yes, so this is another big chapter actually, where we talk a lot about all the different techniques. We talk about the validity techniques from Sean Shea. We talk about the narrative method. And Before Now is a technique which brings together the best of the validity techniques, the intentionality of validity techniques with the kind of the taking time, the compassionate aspects of the narrative method. So Before Now is really all about balancing the head and the heart. So Before Now is an interviewing strategy. As I said, combines the mindful intentionality apparent in the validity techniques with the relational safety generated through validation and understanding in the narrative approach. Both approaches have their strength. However, a major drawback is the time that is needed. So rarely would a busy assessor have the gift of time to let the story unfold at its own pace or use techniques as detailed as a behavioral incident. Under time pressure, vital information may be overlooked, or worse, the person may feel unheard and even more hopeless.
And about safety planning?
So focused, coherent, time-bound narratives are used to explore the storyline effectively and efficiently. So this includes day one, past 2 weeks, past 3 months, before the current episode, and here and now. So there is relevant safety planning information in each time window. So you need to listen carefully as what works and what doesn't work, and it will pop out in each time window.
And the last chapter in Assess, chapter 10?
No, I think there's one more chapter. So chapter 10 is Despair, which is the safety formulation chapter. We have chapter 11 as well.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you got your numbering wrong as well.
Yeah.
You thought 10, we have reached the end of Assess. So it's this one's safety formulation.
So peruse all the facts to ground your decision making.
So you would have heard the emphasis that Mahi was making on the word all, and in the images that we have constructed, the despair image has got all in red, bold letters. So not just the ones that help you in kind of show why you rationalize your decision away. So this is the 1 minute cross check. So despair is an end of assessment, rapid safety formulation. It can be used as a cross check, as I said, to organize all the relevant information and to ensure that due consideration is paid to all the factors which should inform the assessor's opinion about clear and imminent risk. It has been designed to supplement the reflective learning from the AWARE framework and ground risk threshold. It is an antidote for the creep, crash, crawl phenomenon, which actually we haven't covered in the messages. Maybe next time around we might pick that up. Yeah.
And the relation to safety planning?
So the focus is on increasing rigor and prepares for the next step, i.e. safety planning. So by summarizing the most important dynamic and modifiable risk factors and warning signs, that's what you're doing. So all items contribute to the safety plan. However, the final item, kind of risk response, prompts the assessor to think about risk fluctuations that cannot be adequately responded to in the current safety plan, and thus needs further work within the SAFE approach. I should actually mention the acronym, or maybe we should do another episode of the acronyms itself. So despair, just go to the book. It's page number 96, safety formulation.
And now this is the last chapter.
This is the last chapter in
11.
Assess, and I think we will leave the final module for the next time round. So
this is about safety documentation.
Yes.
So capturing illustrative narratives and sticking to the structure.
Absolutely. So the structure of notes, narrative descriptions, options appraisal, therapeutic intervention, escalation plan, and share the plan. So this is paperwork for proper work. So discover and plug gaps in history, think through decisions, and gain clarity about next steps through the process of documentation. Be illustrative, not minimalist. Do you understand what I mean by illustrative, not minimalist?
Not really.
So if you said something like the patient denied suicidal ideation, or the patient said, no, I'm not going to take my life. Actually, that is a little bit illustrative. So the words illustrative and minimalist depend on the profession that you belong to and how much time you have. So for a GP, these are relative terms. They have a 10-minute appointment. They're illustrative, and a psychiatrist illustrative would be very different.
Yeah.
So when you write minimalist documentation, it leaves the person thinking, why did they say that? The patient denied suicidal ideation. So that is minimalist documentation. But as a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a nurse practitioner, we would be expecting you to write, when asked about suicidal ideation, the patient mentioned that they have had passing thoughts, but they provided a lot of assurance that this is something that they are never going to do to themselves because they want to see their children growing up. So that is illustrative documentation. It shows the process of asking the question and the interaction. Because, explain the process by which decisions are arrived at as well. So when you do illustrated documentation, that's what you get to see. If one only documents the outcome of an assessment without the rationale, it would leave the reader wondering why. The notes would read, like a dogmatic assertion rather than decisions that have been made after considering all options. As a general rule of thumb, the more doubt one has, the louder they need to think in their notes.
And the relation to safety planning?
Well, elaborate on next steps and potential options for step up in care if things don't go to plan. So, share this escalation plan with the person, their family, and their professionals who are involved in their care. Communication is life-saving. That's what a safety plan is all about. It's about communication so that everyone understands who's responsible for what, when, where, and how. And the safety plan captures all of that. And the escalation plan in the notes framework, which is the fourth letter, E, escalation plan, what to do and when if the risk changes, is part of your safety planning conversation.
So that finishes assess?
Yeah, that finishes assess. And I think that's a lot of key messages in a very short window of time. So I think we should stop here today. And in the next episode, we'll do a short, sharp episode on Aspire, and we'll pick up the key messages from there. But 50 episodes, that is some achievement. And we have some amazing guests lined up as well for Suicide Prevention Month that is coming up. John Bell will be one of our next speakers on the podcast. So that's coming up. And I think you should tell people about the Instagram account because these images are available on Insta as well.
Yeah. So follow progress.guide on our Instagram to view these messages. We also post updates, new posts.
Yeah, so I think, when was it? Sometime in June that we posted all the images from Protect. Not all the images, the images from Protect onto Instagram. And actually in Malaysia, I did this thing around getting people to comment on the images as a ready reckoner. And that worked really well. So that was the first time we tried that, Malaysia special actually. So for people to look at an image and what comes to their mind, what's the first thing that comes to their mind, and they put a comment on it. So it's the process of kind of writing something down which pins down a particular message. And these images, of course, those of you who have got the subscription of Safe Life Guide, in the subscription view, you get to see the image, the key message, you can write your notes as well, and you get the PDFs of the chapters inside the subscription view of the app. So I guess that's it for today.
Yep.
Well done to you, Mahi, for all the hard work behind the 50 episodes. And thank you to all our podcast listeners. Please keep spreading the word. And if you want a copy of the messages and images books, the key messages book, it's 30 beautifully crafted pages. Just email us. We will send you as a celebration for our 50th episode of the Protect podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Have a good day.